the voters need to realise that the city is almost irreversibly broken. But I don't think it is quite there yet. I do think it is reversible. Otherwise, I wouldn't be trying to do this job.
The competition is becoming less and less, and I think providing an ideal opportunity for Action SA to rise to actually take over these three municipalities: Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Kunene.
These ones, Mashaba, Helen Zille, they've been mayors before. What have they done? They've done nothing. And I've proven myself in 2 days, in 7 days. So I know that the people of Johannesburg trust me.
The race to the top seat in the city of Johannesburg is heating up. Various candidates vying for the mayoral chain, but who's going to emerge victorious? It's Topical starts right now. A very good evening to South Africa and those watching around the world. My name is Bongi Wazwana, standing in for Blaine Herman. This is It's Topical, our digital audience with us tonight, and we'll get their input in just a short while. Now, the mayoral race in the city of gold, that is Johannesburg. Several candidates have already thrown their hats in the ring. Helen Zille is vying for the top seat, while the Patriotic Alliance has put forward Kunene. Worry not, though, the SABC will be watching closely as more names and parties announce their contenders. But here's the crux of the matter: service delivery. It boils down to basics: waters in the taps, electricity that stays on, streets that feel safe. Those are the real priorities that the residents are crying about. Not endless political wrangling, not personal ambition. It's about families. It's about dignity. It's about a functioning city. Leaders need to grasp this very fact, because playing games with people's frustration is dangerous. Not so. The challenge is to acknowledge that frustration, speak directly to it, and also to rebuild the trust that is ever so broken. We can't afford politics that panders to our worst instincts. We need politics that lifts us out to our best. That means ethics. That means maturity. That means devotion to the collective good, which leads us to the question of the week. Who would you like to see as the next mayor, and what pressing issues must they address to restore the City of Gold's service delivery promise? Let us know at SABC News_TV. Would like to hear your thoughts as well as some perspective, of course, coming up. Now, in our regular Word on the Street feature, we took to various streets of Johannesburg, seeking diverse insights as well as perspective on the topic. And this is what people had to say. Watch.
There's a lot of crime that's been happening, and I believe that we do need to give someone else an opportunity. I believe we should give a chance to people from the Action SA, not particularly for any reason outside of let's give them a new opportunity. And if they do fail us, we have the opportunity to vote. That's why we need to exercise it constantly, because the status quo right now in Johannesburg has been very poor. We have issues surrounding just the basic infrastructure. We also have issues just with sanitation, water, electrification, and mostly crime, and we need to deal with everything that's happening within the CBD as well.
Let us give our current mayor Dadamra a chance to run as a mayor, even though he has some few issues of waters and all those things. I believe that if he can rectify his mistake, then I think he can be a good candidate.
On my point of view, I say Kunene. I feel like their perspective is more from where the country should have started and where it's heading. And if we're not going to give everybody a chance to bring their point across, because our old models has been there and it hasn't been working for us.
I think we should give Helen Zille a chance because she's proven herself in a lot of places.
I prefer Action SA, even though I know Herman Mashama won't be the one for the position. But based on Pretoria, 012, the town there is very clean compared to Johannesburg. Johannesburg is the neighboring city next to Pretoria.
In my opinion, I do think that Helen Zille does have the potential, and I think that she has proven herself in other places, and I've personally seen the work that she's done, and I do think that she can make a change in our city.
So what do these political parties have to offer? Find out after the break. Welcome back. Let's remind you of our question for the week. Who would you like to see as the next Joburg mayor, and what pressing issues must they address, particularly for you, to restore the city's service delivery promise? Let us know. But get in touch with us at SABC News_TV. All right, let's get into the conversation this evening. Remember, we do have our digital audience back in studio. We have Democratic Alliance's National Spokesperson Willie Aucamp, as well as political analyst Dr. Ongama Mtimka. We also have ANC's Member of Parliament Cameron Dugmore, who is joining us via video link alongside a digital audience. We also are expecting to have Action SA's Johannesburg caucus leader, Councillor Masao Kutries, in studio. We also have extended an invitation to the Economic Freedom Fighters and Patriotic Alliance, and both parties could not avail themselves for the debate tonight. A very good evening to you both, and thank you so much for your time. Willie, I'm going to start with you. This is a city that is no doubt in trouble, and Helen Zille is hoping that she can be able to fix this, but I wonder what becomes the first point of call.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. I think the first point of call is to realize the extent of the problems. It will be useless if one goes into this and think it's going to be easy to sort out. It is not. It is a humongous task to turn around what has been wrong in Johannesburg over the last 30 years. And
sounds like you're asking the voters to give you 30 years then.
No, not at all. I think it can be done. It can be done quickly as well. Not like Dada Moreira said, it's going to take years and years of time. You've got to walk in here with the political will to do the right thing. And that political will include being honest about the problems and making sure that you get the right people in to do the job. If you want to turn Johannesburg and any other metro around, you've got to stop cater deploying. You've got to stop putting people into positions that they do not know how to execute. Get the right people in. People out there in this country don't care anymore whether it's an ANC card-carrying member, whether it's a black person or a white person or a coloured or an Indian person. They want service delivery. I don't care whether every single employee here is black or white or brown, but please be able to do your job, and that is what we're going to need.
All right. Cameron, I'm going to bring you into this conversation. It seems, according to the Democratic Alliance, Dada Moreira is the worst man for the job.
Well, I think that's typical of the arrogance not only of Mr. Aucamp, but the Democratic Alliance as a whole. And I think it's very unfortunate. And the reality is that when one is looking at a mayor, I would want to make the argument that you've got to look both at the policies of the particular organization that that person stands for. And then you also have to obviously look at the individual, and you have to look at the plan. And I think it's clear to me that from the perspective of the Democratic Alliance, a party, for instance, at a policy level, which is against the minimum wage, that opposes employment equity. And we have a record in the Western Cape and in Cape Town where senior competent African and coloured, black and coloured managers were deliberately sidelined by Helen Zille, both when she was premier and so on. So you have to look at the policies of the organization, and you also have to look at the individual. When one looks, for instance, at the record of Helen Zille when she was the mayor of Cape Town and the premier, the reality is that not a single piece of municipal or provincial land in the city for all these years that the DA has been governing Cape Town from 2006 has been made available for social housing. Helen Zille herself stopped Tafelberg being developed for social housing in Sea Point, wanting to rather to give it private school. So one has to look, service delivery is critical, and water, sanitation, all of those issues. But you also have to have the ability to cooperate with provincial
on that point,
and national. Fortunately,
please allow me to come in. Pardon me. Allow me to come in. You're speaking a lot about the Democratic Alliance. What has Dada Morero done right?
Well, you must also understand that, as I see it, Herman Mashaba was a DA mayor. And there were serious issues in terms of the state of finances when he left. After that, the DA put up Dr. Mpho. So one must get away from this impression that Dada Morero, as the current mayor of Joburg, has been responsible for everything that's happened since 2016. But what I do appreciate about the mayor, he's acknowledged the huge infrastructure backlog, service delivery, and has put up a rapid response team, and that they have been responding directly to issues. And clearly the water issue and many of those issues remain. But for anyone to claim that as an individual you can solve that without a cooperative approach with national and provincial working together. And I think Dada Morero is a much more, and obviously as the ANC still has to look at the whole issue of deciding on candidates. But as the mayor of Joburg, he's working with the presidential team, with the province, and that cooperative approach and the rapid response team is showing some green shoots.
All right, I'm going to come to those green shoots in just a moment. Ongama, Cameron says that there's some green shoots in the city of Johannesburg. Are they?
The challenge with Joburg is that you've got the major issues that do not work. And as a result of that, it doesn't matter how you succeed elsewhere. Water, electricity, roads, municipal roads at that, those are major issues that affect the state of the economy. We know if you allow that degeneration to worsen, especially of municipal roads, then you've got businesses that have to service vehicles all the time because the roads are bad. And I mean, we've seen this in municipalities that had anchor investors where that entire city depended on, you know, the state of roads and municipal infrastructure. That things crumble when you don't get the core issues, you know, to be focused on.
Willie, you wanted to respond. I could see you itching to respond to some of what Cameron had to say. I'll give you a brief moment before I go to Utando.
Well, firstly, I think if one starts your comment by attacking the personality of the other person sitting there, calling me and the party arrogant, I would say I would rather be arrogant than absolutely dishonest, because that is, with all due respect, what Cameron Dugmore was now tonight. His attack on Helen Zille is clearly he does not know what that woman stands for and what she has done. She became mayor in 2006, taking over from the ANC in Cape Town. In 2008, she was announced as the World Mayor of the Year. She got that award. She turned that municipality around, and she will definitely do her utmost best to do it here as well. I started out by saying we must admit what the problems are. You asked Cameron whether he can say anything good that Dada Morero has done. And again, he pivoted back to Herman Mashaba when he was the DA mayor. The reason for that is Cameron just does not have an answer. He does not have an answer of anything good that Dada Morero has done. And I think Joburgers can see that. When I drove here tonight, I tried to count the amount of street lamps that were out. I just stopped. It's too many. You should try and count the ones that are working. I dodged potholes with a rental car. It's a terrible thing what happened in this municipality. And again, yeah, I agree with Cameron. It will need a collective effort. But you must have the political will. Yes, you must have the correct budget. Just to give you an idea, of the 23-24 budget of almost 90 billion, 12.2 billion thereof was not spent correctly. It's almost 14%. 46% of all water in Johannesburg goes to waste. I mean, that shows you that for many years, maintenance hasn't happened, proper planning and expansion hasn't happened, and that is what we need now.
I'm going to come to the issue of proper planning in just a moment, because there is something I want to ask about the city of Cape Town, because you still have people living far from economic opportunities, even in the city of Cape Town. So how then do you begin to resolve that in the city of Joburg? But hold that thought. Uthando, for you, let's just talk about what will it take to win your heart as a voter.
Good evening, Bongiwe, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. So focusing on Helen Zille as part of the DA, the concerns that Joburg residents have are that as glamorous as Cape Town is made to be, there's a reason it has been referred to as the United States of Cape Town. If you're matching the success that Cape Town has to what Joburg could be, then it would be of comfort that the DA speaks on how Joburg wouldn't be redesigned to appeal only to the desires of American and European foreigners, where we're now left with a gross caricature of the city of gold, but its residents no longer have access to that gold. One could say that focusing on economically higher groups could take care of everyone else through some trickle-down effect. But the simple principle of development is that it needs to start with those who are furthest behind. Can a party really say that they've successfully uplifted that region when those furthest behind are in the exact same place, if not worse? Are we really moving towards better circumstances if it means leaving those in poverty for dead? South Africa still sadly scores high on the Gini coefficients due to the income inequality, and we're not worried enough about how the richest and poorest neighborhoods can be one road away from each other. Not all that glitters in Cape Town can be Joburg's gold.
All right, Uthando, hold for a second. Willie, I'm going to give you a chance in just a moment. Ongama, I want you to tie in there, because this is a very important political point that she's also raising.
Yeah, no, it's a very important point. You know, there are times in the lives of nations where you need a particular type of leadership to emerge. There is a multiplicity of crises that face Johannesburg, and the conditions are ripe for the rise of what in history has been called strong men or strong women. And the political parties have got to raise candidates, or have got to field candidates who've got the capability from a personal leadership perspective to manage complex political environments in order to turn around. So to lead a turnaround, you need people that can focus. Indeed, it's important, and it's a very important point that Uthando is making, that you need to do it in a way that doesn't further deepen the divide between the rich and the poor. And by the way, the DA has the option in Cape Town, as it would here if it comes to power, to turn around downtown and create accommodation there, you know, for inclusive accommodation. The buildings are there, but the reason why it's not being done, I saw, for example, in 2019, with the manifesto in 2019, where their version of equitable property redress was going to make use of those buildings. How far has that gone? So there's a fair criticism being made that the level of commitment to the kind of development that is inclusive and pro-poor is limited when you look at the approach that says create an enabling environment for business to thrive, because business is going to thrive in a way that deepens the challenges.
When we come back from the break, Willie, I'll give you a chance to respond, but also just to add to some of what Uthando had to say, so that we juxtapose the two and see if the fears, Ongama, of some who are saying that we might see the same thing happen in Johannesburg like we've seen in Cape Town, are they, you know, real, or is it unfounded fears? We'll talk about that, and Cameron Dugmore is still with us. And of course, remember, we are still hoping to speak to Action SA as well, the caucus leader in the city of Johannesburg. We did reach out to the EFF, we did reach out to the Patriotic Alliance, but we'll continue with the show in just a moment. All right, we continue with this conversation. Willie, quickly, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to what Uthando had to say.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we must look at what is the real facts on the ground. If we want a divide to become smaller, we need to create jobs. We need to have an environment that local government is putting there that will assist businesses to thrive. The unemployment rate in Cape Town is 10% lower than any other metro in this country. If we do the same in Johannesburg, it will help to work away that divide. If people have got jobs and if they can have employment, they can enrich themselves and become better off. The problem that we've got is businesses does not necessarily want to put up a factory in Johannesburg because they don't know whether they will have stable water, stable electricity. The roads in and around their buildings will be dilapidated, so they'll have problems with transport. Whereas in Cape Town, those things are addressed. When we had load shedding, Cape Town was always one level lower than the rest of the country. So to answer a question, the unemployment rate is 10% lower. Imagine if we can lower the unemployment rate in Johannesburg by 10%. How many more people out of the millions here will have jobs?
I still want to come to the issue of crime in just a moment, but I see Cameron has been making some notes as you've been talking. Mr. Dugmore, what have you been writing?
Yes, I just want to stress again that I think to deal with Joburg and all other metros, you need the political will, you need a strategy between the city, the province, and you need a cooperative approach with the national, because many of the issues are about reinstalling aging infrastructure at many levels. You need good governance, but it's also about the politics and the policies of the parties. Now, I want to put it on record. When we come to an issue such which the guest, one of your guests raised, the professor, he talked about well-located land. Now, Helen Zille had 4 years as mayor, 10 years as premier, and in that 15 years, not one building belonging to the city, not one piece of land belonging to the city in the inner city was developed for social housing. Tafelberg, which belonged to the provincial government, is in Sea Point available for social housing. And Zille actively opposed that and wanted to lease that or sell that land to a private school. And that is an indication of what you don't need. You don't need a party with policies that are anti-poor, that don't take into account the divides between rich and poor, and what you need to do to break down the spatial inequalities that flow from a colonial past. And Mr. Aucamp himself, if I can say, the other day on SAFM was implying that someone like Paul Kruger are not colonialists and have not contributed to the legacy of colonialism. And I think we need to get out of that mindset. We are South Africans, but unless we understand the need for redress, for equity, you take Mitchell's Plain, you take Khayelitsha. I would argue that if you take Soweto and you look at what's happened since democracy in terms of the investment in the overall infrastructure of Soweto, and you compare that to Khayelitsha or Mitchell's Plain in the Western Cape, you can see, despite challenges and problems, there's been more political will to invest at an infrastructure level in those communities. Yeah. And that is something that we need to consider, is how do we, with transport, last point, Rea Vaya, the public transport is critical. In Joburg, they started Rea Vaya, and I know there are issues, but the political was to start in Joburg, Soweto coming into town. In Cape Town, they started in the Blauberg, leaving out poorer communities like Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha, which needed my city in the beginning. So it's an issue of choice. And that's why the politics and the policy of the parties are important, not the individuals yet.
Okay, finish up your point quickly. Okay. Mulatelo, let me come to you because just before we continue, because there is another issue though, and I'm keen to hear from the Democratic Alliance and the ANC, how do they begin to deal with this one? And this is the issue of the influx of people. It's a reality to the city of Johannesburg, and it is also contributing to the crumbling infrastructure. But for you, Mulatelo, let's speak about some of the issues that you have as a South African that you wish that the city of Johannesburg, those in power, can actually address.
Good evening, Bongiwe. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. Bongiwe, good evening once again. I think first and foremost, we need to understand the fact that a clean audit doesn't mean that the municipality has been run well. If money is going to be sent back to Treasury, where local communities and townships are not developed. Let's start there. Number two, I think for me personally, I believe that South Africa needs a new type of politics, because the current one that we have, where we have politics of personalities, do not address the issues that we face as local citizens of Johannesburg. Because at the end of the day, what I want is I want something that will benefit me as a citizen. But if, for example, I am looking at a specific political party and I'm loyal to a political party, as opposed to being loyal to service delivery, I think that's the problem. Yeah. South Africans need to understand that being loyal to a political party and not loyal to a service delivery only means that you are a voting cattle. So at the end of the day, for me personally, I believe that, the type of politics that we have now, especially with coalition politics, it's now politics of egos and politics of people throwing each other with a live snake. For example, Mr. Aucamp and I don't know the other gentleman.
They were busy
going at each other. Yes, Mr. Dugmore. They were busy going at each other, whereas we were facing serious issues of potholes and informal settlements mushrooming up in the area. So I believe that needs to be addressed. Thanks.
Let me give Ntatwa a chance before I circle back to Dr. Mtimka. Ntatwa?
Good evening. I want to ask whether it is possible for political parties to put politics aside and work and service the people of Johannesburg. For example, we have heard about a lot of frequent mayoral changes, and that has affected the service delivery in Joburg. Is it possible when coalition is formed, can the other political parties support that party and put the interests of the Joburg people ahead?
Let's see if that's even a possibility. Dr. Mtimka, is it a possibility that these are political parties ultimately? You see them right now, they're in the GNU, but everyone is still vying to say to South Africans, me, right? And even now, we're heading to the local government elections, they're still fighting. So is it a possibility to have them put their political ideologies aside and actually work towards a common goal?
Well, we need a lot more commitment to the idea of a working South Africa and a South Africa that works for all, in order to get our politics right. There is too much contestation over control of patronage networks to permit for that to happen. One of the big things, I hear what Mr. Dugmore is saying in terms of differences in policies and whose policies are desirable. The problem is that the actors who assume office do not act pursuant to the policies when they get there. They get there and circumvent not just the principles of governing better, but even the very promises of political parties, some of which are really great, So you can't do much about with a country where we have entrenched this idea that the love of money is preeminent over all other imperatives, such that people are going to form networks that capture political parties because there's a direct line between controlling a political party office and the office in the state. I think that the ANC, particularly because it's been the majority party or the party with the most votes, one of the things it can do to help South Africa, in order, in fact, to help itself, is to stop this thing of avoiding two centers of power, which it entrenched in the 2007 conference, because it created an environment in which capturing of party office automatically means you are going to be the mayor. Now you create an environment where your best doesn't emerge because they are not spending time building branches in a particular area. And now you are hamstrung because you've created a principal who controls the regional office becomes the mayor. So I think my issue in answering your question is that you've got a very self-centered attitude to leadership in South Africa in general. And then you've got the biggest party that has created a mechanism and in fact has allowed itself to be abused by elites who've got interests to advance themselves and their families and have nothing to do with the party's objectives.
Quickly, before I go to Stelo, that's a huge risk though, because especially when you look at a city like Johannesburg, for example, where expenditure exceeds income currently, you look at a dip of about 86% when it comes to the revenue collection rate. These are serious problems that the council, those in government in the city of Johannesburg should be grappling with in order to make sure that the city is actually functioning as opposed to just fighting about politics?
Indeed, the two cities, Joburg and eThekwini, have got big budgets, but as you say, they have nothing to show for it. Collection rates are poor, and it's not like at some point in the life of the city in the democratic period, things haven't been done right. There has been time when those collection rates were quite high. There were times when informal settlements were being upgraded. I think that's the point Mr. Dugmore was making. There were informal settlements were being upgraded. You had infrastructure being invested there, roads being built and gravel roads being tarred. Except that over time, you then need to focus on the maintenance of that infrastructure. And now, what was great success of the democratic government in the early 2000s to the late 2000s has now become a sore point for people, because yes, you were excited about service connections, except that now you don't know whether you're going to have service or not in that same infrastructure that was there in informal settlements.
I'm going to come back to you, Willie, in just a moment. Let me give Stella a chance. Stella, for you, especially when you look at the issues, I mean, I was listening to the electricity minister speak about the issue of, you know, what we're calling load reduction. Ultimately, that speaks of a system that is constrained. It impacts a lot of South Africans. At the same time, streets are dirty. Driving here, for example, I passed through some streets with a lot of litter. Stuff like that is what people care about. And I wonder for you, what is at the heart of what you need fixed in the city of Joburg?
Thank you so much, and good evening to our viewers and guests. And I think there's a lot of things, firstly, that I must point out. There are issues of water. As we know that the city of Joburg currently has an issue with infrastructure that relates to water. We need, of course, a steady electricity supply. We need fixed potholes. But more than anything, within the CBD, which is the heart of Joburg, really, and sort of is the character of the city of gold, we need safe buildings, and we need these buildings to be used for things. As a student leader myself, I would argue for things like student accommodations, where we have a national crisis where students don't even have places to sleep at night. So this is a question that speaks to the KPAs, and I appreciated what Ntatua said about this ever-changing mayorship that has been happening since 2016, where we've had, I think, close to 11 mayors, if I'm not mistaken. I stand to be corrected. That changes the priorities that these different departments within the city of Joburg have, thus shifting the KPAs. And recently we conducted a study which speaks to exactly why is it so difficult to implement certain policies. And it comes down to our civil service being demoralized by the ever-changing KPAs and priorities that the various executive leadership brings about. And that's a problem for us, because once you don't have a KPA, you don't have the will to commit to certain policies. And that's a very big problem that I would like to just bring my 2 cents on.
All right, I'm going to circle back to some of you in just a moment. But Willie, you mentioned that when you were driving here, street lights aren't working, right? But for example, in the city of Joburg, you've got dipslit. Street lights in some areas have been out for decades. And this makes it easy for criminals to be able to pounce on people. And also at the same time, emergency vehicles in some of these areas cannot be able to go in. In Orange Farm, for example, residents, some of them do line up daily just to get access to water. In Bramfisherville, you've got flooding when it rains that persists. In the city of Cape Town, we've spoken to some, activists from the city of Cape Town, Ditindi Chito, for example, who would then come in and say that in areas like Khayelitsha, in areas like Nyanga, in areas like some other areas as well, you may find that in the township street lights aren't working. You find that in some of the areas where there would be informal settlements, still there, emergency vehicles are not able to get in because there are no street lights. They also in some of these areas not even street numbers. It sounds like the same problem that is here in the city of Johannesburg, thus raising the concern for others that it could be a tale of two cities should the DA come into power in the city of Johannesburg. How do you contend with that?
The topic here tonight is Johannesburg, but we've been talking quite a lot about Cape Town.
I'm juxtaposing it because the DA is in power in Cape Town.
But this is what I want to say to you. Cape Town Metro spends 75% of its budget in poorer areas, far more than any of the other ANC-run metros. So you will have poorer areas in any town in the country. We always hear about Guguletu, and we always hear about Mitchell's Plain and those areas, but we hardly ever hear about Alexandra and the other places in Johannesburg where there are also living poor people. The question is, what is government doing to try its best to alleviate the problems that they've got? And Cape Town spending 75% of its budget on the poorer areas. We spoke about housing earlier.
Why aren't you able then to, if you spend a chunk of your budget there, why are you not able to overcome your problems there?
It's a growing problem, but we are winning that problem. We are day by day putting in more services. Cape Town has per capita, per person, more service delivery, more free water, more free electricity than any of the other metros. So what Cape Town is doing to the poor and to benefit the poor are overshadowing what all the other metros are doing. We were talking about housing earlier on. Cape Town is building more housing for the poor than any other metro. So the electorate, the people out there that's got to decide on where they're going to vote, has got to ask himself one of two questions. Do I want to stay in a DA-run, properly run municipality where services get delivered, where money is being spent to the poor? Or do I want to stay in a corrupt, ANC-run municipality where maintenance doesn't take place and where service delivery has gone down the drain over many years? We saw that in Johannesburg. Let's come a bit closer to Joburg. Let's take Midvaal and Mfuleni, two municipalities in Gauteng right on the doorstep of Joburg. They're right next to each other. They've got the same demographics, more or less. Midvaal has been receiving clean audits now, I think, for 11 years. Service delivery taking place. You can go drive through them. Go right next door to Mfuleni, where the ANC is governing, and you've got problems with your audit, you've got problems with service delivery. The question is, it's about mature political will. And just one last thing on coalitions. We have entered the era of coalition politics. The time has now arrived that we must be mature in our approach, we must be honest with each other, and we must put the interest of the people first. You must always ask yourself, not what's in your party's interest, but what's...
How, when your party within the GNU, if it doesn't get what it wants, we hear a lot about what you do not want, and you're not in a collective, but you almost emerge as a lone ranger.
We're definitely not a rubber stamp for the ANC. And that is exactly what must happen when mature coalitions takes place. If you're going to be a rubber stamp or a lackey for the other party, you could have merged with them. Okay. We are growing into this, and I'm quite sure that Johannesburg will have a coalition government afterwards. The question is, will it be a mature coalition government that will not put party interest up front, but that will put the interest of the people of Johannesburg up front, and that is what we need.
Quite an important question you asked there. Mulatelo, you were laughing, shaking your head. What's happening?
No, I was just thinking, when he speaks about housing and how the DA is taking care of, the rural communities. I've got a list here of DA failures within the Western Cape, where they have been rehashing the same projects. They rehash these projects 4 times, 5 times, over and over again, as if it's new projects which do not exist. Number 1, the Founders Garden, it was re-announced 4 times, ever since they started and said that they want to turn it into social housing. The Woodstock parking lot, it's been closed there. They said they wanted to turn it into a social housing project. The Ruland Street Fruit and Veg site, the government garage, that's part of the city, Central City Regeneration Plan. The Lulu site as well. The New Market Street, Pickwick Streets that has been announced twice now. The Salt River Market that has also been blocked from being used as affordable student and social housing. So what I'm trying to say here is we must not be misled, and the citizens of Johannesburg must not be misled by politicians who are coming here to come and campaign for their parties. There has been a break in social contract between South Africans and political parties. And we cannot have people come on national platforms and coming to us and telling us we must vote for them, whereas we do our digging to find the stuff that are not being taken care of, especially for people who are disadvantaged.
Yeah.
So I'm really not happy with Mr. Aucamp and what he has said. Thank you.
Well, I gave the statistics.
Thank you.
I gave the statistics of the amount of the budget of Cape Town that's being spent on the poor. And that is the thing. We need to come to Cape Town. I'll give him a chance now. I mean, I've been taken on now. So
I needed him to also add, because I know he's going to add, so you can just
The point
respond.
is we need to apply what we've done in Cape Town with the amount of the budget that's being spent on the poor. We must come and bring this to Johannesburg as well, and have real service delivery. It's one thing to call names and to say this place and this place, but at the end of the day, we must have the reality on the ground by stats and by what the Auditor General said, and by the way, by what the President said. Go and look at how Cape Town is being run. It's not I that say that, it's the President that said that. So, and that is because of the service that is being delivered there.
All right. Cameron?
Thank you. Yeah, no, thanks very much. I think the point that I wanted to make about no social housing in the inner city has been amplified by the person, and I'm sorry, I didn't, I think it's Sicelo. Yeah. That was the point I was making. Helen Zille, who the DA is putting up to stand, at a level of being able to deal with the critical thing in cities, breaking down spatial apartheid. She was mayor for 5 years, premier for 10. So in 15 years, not a single property for inner city housing was announced. And Sicelo also, Molatelo also mentioned 5 projects which have been basically announced 5 times. So that is, I think, one issue that I also want to respond to. I think it is important how one looks at the legislation which governs setting up local governments after elections and the issue of motions of no confidence. And in the National Assembly, where I serve at the moment as an ANC MP, there is currently a revision of local government legislation which will look at how does one, in the context of a coalition, form a stable local government. Because at the end of the day, whether it's Durban, whether it's Cape Town, whether it's Joburg or Tshwane, you're going to have to really come together. And I think that's one of your guests argued. How does one ensure stability? But my argument this evening is that the politics are also important. So it might not be a big thing for Helen Zille if she's not prepared to acknowledge that there's a genocide in Gaza. But for many people in our country, that's an important issue. If you're against the minimum wage, if you don't support employment equity, if you don't support the integration of our cities, those are important policy issues. But we need to focus, and that's why the ANC called for thousands of its councillors together, had a roll call, and has now got a 6-point action plan. We have responsive teams meeting Mondays, because we acknowledge we have not performed. The reality is...
Quick one.
I'll come back later.
Cameron, right on that point, pardon me for coming in there, because I just want to tell you on what you're saying, right? You speak about the roll call. One of the questions I had about this roll call was, why was it not done before when the councillors were going into the jobs, and it's only done now just before the elections?
Well, the ANC does have a policy of candidate selection and then monitoring and evaluating councillors as we go along. But the national leadership, and I think correctly so, felt that given the number of problems with accountability, responsiveness, and so on, that we really needed to bring people together and give marching orders. And yes, Mr. Aucamp raised an issue around, and I think the President has clarified very clearly that yes, we all must pursue clean audits, but a clean audit is in no way a guarantee. And also on the issue of funding, norms and standards, indigent policy for the poor, basic water, basic electricity, come from the national fiscus and go to all municipalities. The Western Cape and Cape Town have actually returned money to Treasury for not upgrading informal settlements in Cape Town. That's a matter of public record.
Dr. Mtimka, I still want to stay with that question, because it's almost like it boggles the mind. Why do you call councillors closer to an election versus calling them after they have been elected and going in to the job? So they go into the jobs with a 6-point plan, knowing what the next 5 years holds for them.
Let me build on Cameron's answer. He's saying it's M&E which the ANC uses, except that the ANC doesn't use M&E when it matters the most, to determine whether a person can come back to office. For that, it uses a different mechanism, which is why it's resulted in failures. back in the late 2000s, the differences among metros in terms of performance were marginal. Metros, like in terms of access to services. And I thought I'd fact check Willie. And I see that indeed, if you look across the board, Cape Town does tick the boxes as far as the service delivery in marginally higher ways. Now, the reason why the ANC is struggling to do that is not because of failure to do performance management. It's failure to give effect to its outcomes. So you're going to secure, keep, or lose office on the basis of everything else except for how you are performing while you are in government. And I think that needs a fundamental change. What Mr. Aucamp is saying, though, about what the DA does to deal with inequality does reflect ultraliberalism that actually does need to be checked in South Africa. You cannot have this idea that if you succeed in management as a city, then people are going to be able to change their lives by themselves, when there's a lot of impediments to that. So there's need to be state-led, even at a local level, state-led interventions that seek to catalyze development. Among them is inclusive housing policy, but also the stimulation of small enterprises, the intentional development of townships, reimagining the economies. Look, townships are fatal flaws. Verwoerd is said to have said himself that what he was doing, what the apartheid government was doing, no government could fix in future. So we must appreciate that, but it doesn't mean there shouldn't be attempts to reimagine townships as vibrant economies that can be stimulated, but also it doesn't mean that you shouldn't create inclusive inner city spaces for that can be used for development.
You speak about development, and Willie, I wonder what is the DA's plan when it comes to the influx of people. For example, some statistics put it at around 230,000 odd people flocking into the city of Johannesburg. No doubt this puts a strain on resources. This puts a strain on the budget of the city. How are you proposing to deal with that?
I think, firstly, we must look why that happens. People are moving away from places where they don't have a future. And we need to turn that around. We need to get the Nelson Mandela Bays and the Queenies and all the other places in this country sorted out. People want to stay close to where they grew up and where their family are. So it's out of a necessity for them to come here. And it places an additional burden on places like Johannesburg and Cape Town. So we've got to make sure that we deal with those. And the only way in which you're going to deal with those is by providing proper local government. You've got to make sure that the money intended for local government and for service delivery go there and not goes into the pockets of fat cat politicians. We saw what the Zondo Commission report said with regards to corruption. We know about corruption in the city. If you've got 46% of your water going to waste, you've got the capacity to almost double the amount of water that you can provide to Johannesburgers, even though there might be a 200,000 plus influx. But if you're going to have leaking pipes and not going to do maintenance, you will not be able to do that. When you've got the political will, when you've got the maturity of good management, and obviously there must be consequence management as well. Mm-hmm. If you've got that, it's a good start to turn that around. And Johannesburg is the economical hub of the country. We will always have an influx of people, and we in the past had that. But we've got to grow with that, and we've got to make sure that our infrastructure grow with that.
All right, Stalo, I'm going to come to you quickly before we wrap the show. I mean, if I look at some of the stats, for example, that we've just been able to collate, right, is that Willie speaks about water loss. We've spoken about, you've said it, around power loss. But there's another issue here. This is around bridges that risk collapsing in the city of Johannesburg, about 80% of them. We also are seeing infrastructure being vandalized. Videos circulate on social media where we see people stripping infrastructure bare, stripping traffic lights. But it doesn't seem like this bit of lawlessness is actually dealt with, does it?
No, it actually doesn't, and I think, thank you very much for bringing up the question of lawlessness, because that brings into question the security forces that are in the management of the city of Joburg. And I will track back perhaps in the last 3 years, just as an example to show the lack of management or effective management that the city of Joburg has been imposing. There hasn't been a chief of police for the JMPD, just as an example, up until recently. And then the chief of police that was just appointed is a stone throw away from retirement. What does that person have to offer the city? And those are the questions that when you dig deeper into the community safety portfolio of the city of Joburg, raises eyebrows, because there is challenges at every single rank and level of the management of things like the JMPD, like the EMS, like Joburg Fire. I mean, how many fire trucks does the city have that are operational and that are licensed to operate in cases of emergencies? And so that's it's a concerning, to say the very least, in terms of our safety. We're not safe with the way that JMPD is being managed.
It is quite concerning. As we wrap up the show in about 30 seconds, Cameron, for you, why would a viewer watching you tonight choose the ANC as an option come the local government elections?
The ANC is focusing on turning local government around, acknowledging deep problems. We've got a 6-point action plan. We're holding councils accountable. And what we also want to say is why one would support an ANC candidate for Joburg is that this notion that Helen Zille, who actually failed concretely to deliver on housing, created effectively 2 cities in Cape Town, would essentially be someone who would deeply entrench inequality further in Joburg. The ANC has policies which are aimed at transformation, correcting mistakes and problems, but has a 6-point plan to take Joburg and other metros and municipalities forward.
Willie?
Joburg has got a lot of trouble, and there's huge problems that need to be sorted out. I know Helen Zille very well. If there's one person in this country that will be able to sort out the trouble of Johannesburg, it is Helen Zille. The ANC saw to it that these problems are here. We saw it in many other places. Helen Zille will come in and she will fix it. You do not get appointed as mayor in 2006 and then win the Mayor of the Year award worldwide in 2008 if you do not know how to govern. Johannesburg needs Helen Zille. She grew up here. She's in love with this place. She's been since she was a little girl, and she knows what needs to be done to turn this around. She's done it in Cape Town in 2006. She will do it in Johannesburg in 2026.
Ntadua doesn't seem to be convinced by what you're saying. She's been actually killing herself with laughter since you started speaking. And I wonder, Ntadua, for you, 20 seconds, why?
Well, Helen Zille doesn't understand, or seems to not understand, the socio-economic factors in South Africa. We have watched her talking about racial issues in South Africa. I don't think she understands. I think whenever she talks from white privilege. That's my perspective on Helen Zille.
Tando, 10 seconds for you.
We need to be careful because we don't want a duplication of the same issues, whether that would happen by having ANC continue in Joburg or bringing in the DA. Coalitions, though, especially for a major city like Joburg, won't be done maturely the same way the GNU wasn't created maturely. It was out of desperation. In fact, I'd have more respect for a party openly indicating that they're showing their political prowess by doing what's necessary to secure good service delivery.
All right. Dr. Mtimka, as you sum it up in about 10 seconds for you, what is needed in the city of Johannesburg?
Quite clearly, if the DA wants to succeed here, they've got to overcome trust issues. They've got to change the managerialist approach, which they think is all you need, to also having a little bit of a soul there in terms of what the people need. So combine that, there's great success. The ANC can do the people of South Africa a better job by just killing the tendency of its electoral processes to assume office or to become chosen for councillor, to to be freed from elite interests.
All right. Thank you so much to all for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you. It's really been quite the debate, minus the EFF, Patriotic Alliance and Action SA. We did reach out to them, by the way. So certainly they were given a chance to be part of this debate. So if you've missed anything on the program, then be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube as well as on SABC+. And if you're watching a repeat of this program, then, as always, the news continues. Unwrap Africa up next with Tembegile Mkhototo, followed by the G20 Focus with Thulasizwe Simelane at 8:30 tonight. So stay tuned. Until next week, take care.